Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Tavern Adjacent. Thank you so much for coming to the show. We are back on the solo set because, well, we don't have a guest this week. I do like talking to you guys one-on-one every now and then, especially when we're talking about stuff as juicy as what we're going to talk about today. Did you guys know that Arcadum came back to the YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter space again this past couple months? No one really noticed, so I don't blame you if you didn't notice. I noticed last month, a few weeks late, and I decided to wait it out a little to see what would happen, and nothing happened. So I'm going to talk about it now. After that, we're going to talk about something a lot more wholesome, a lot more fun. My D&D campaign ended. After 2 years, we ended with a 7-hour session, and there was a bit of an RPG horror story, and we're going to talk about that. And then at the very end, we might talk about some homebrew. I have no idea how much time we're going to have left, but we're going to talk about some homebrew and some of my ideas for revamping D&D races, because that's what we're doing right now in my own homebrew D&D rewrite. So, yeah, we've got a lot to talk about today, so without further ado, let's get started. Oh, Arcadum. Now, if you guys are unaware, Arcadum was a D&D Twitch streamer and YouTuber who ran the world of Verum. He had an extremely respectable audience, hundreds of thousands of people tuning into those streams, watching the VODs. He had lots of high-profile contacts in the Twitch community, working with big VTubers like Momo or Joe Cat. He worked with Moist Critical. He had a lot of big names working with him because, I mean, in the Twitch space, he was very, very well known. He had a thriving career. And, well, it all vanished very, very quickly. Remember that Momo VTuber? Well, she released a statement that had some very unflattering things to say about Arcadum. A lot of people had some very unflattering things to say about Arcadum. Allegations ranging from harassment to assault of the sexual nature. And that is bad. Obviously, these are all allegations. Arcadum has not been convicted in any court system by any means, but a lot of people found these allegations extremely, extremely compelling. Arcadum was even caught on camera. He was recorded in a video call where he was acting very unflattering towards a friend of his, calling her weak and saying that he is an emotionless soldier who's been trained not to feel anything, which, yeah, a little bit cringy. Also claimed that he can't play Among Us because his power might leak into the physical world. It was all a little bit much. These allegations were bad, to say the least, ranging from Among Us cringe to assault. It was bad. Arcadum's response was also quite bad. He obviously denied any illegal actions, as to be expected, let's be honest. And he also denied any exploitation of people for sexual gain. He claimed that these were all legitimate relationships because he was struggling with his long-term girlfriend, and he just needed these relationships to, I don't know, balance himself, and he wasn't ready. You know, he needed this, which a lot of people took very badly, to say the least. Speaking of his girlfriend/wife, he's not very consistent about which one. He claims both at multiple times. But anyway, we'll say girlfriend. His long-term girlfriend, she also had some very unflattering things to say about Arcadum on the domestic side. And, well, that was that. Arcadum released a few very melodramatic clips about this being the end of his career, the end of everything that I've built, which is among my favorite of the dumb YouTuber influencer apologies, but, you know, we can get to that list one day. It's not in my top, 3, but it definitely is at least in my top 5 favorites, but we'll talk about that list some other time. The point is, he was done. This was bad. Not only did he make himself look like a monster, he made himself look like a pathetic monster. This man was mocked all over the internet. The voice call that I brought up earlier was turned into many, many memes. And if there's anything terrible to be on the internet, it's not just a monster, it's a meme. Because they got a lifespan. Arcadum became a joke that only lasted so long, and therefore his career was very much done. And in my opinion, based on the allegations, It was definitely deserved. The guy was over. Until he wasn't. In October, Arcadum returned to Twitch. I know, we're getting to his most recent return later. Just give me a second. In October, Arcadum returned, and people didn't take very kindly to that, but at the end of the day, the attention from his return died down very quickly. Arcadum did not receive nearly as much attention as he did before, whereas once he had thousands upon thousands of people coming into his streams, now he had 100, which, let's be clear, I'm not trying to compliment Arcadum by any means, God no, but if we're being honest, on Twitch, even having 5 viewers is kind of a big deal. The vast majority of streams have 0 viewers, so having 100, not bad at all, especially for somebody of Arcadum's current profile. But that viewership was steadily declining. A lot of those people stuck around for only so long. Many of them just were there to make fun of him. He actually set the chat to emote-only mode, quite famously in a clip, for obvious reasons. His words, not mine. As time went on, even more people forgot about Arcadum, until in March. I forgot about Arcadum until I randomly decided to look up his Twitter, because I was just curious, like, has this guy done anything with his account? Like, what was the last thing posted on there? And I saw that he was regularly posting about his streams. Like, hey guys, we're streaming the latest so-and-so. Come to the stream. And then there would be a response of somebody going, I forgot I followed you, unfollow. Sums up his current career. But I scrolled down a little bit, and I found an update. I have an update for you guys, is what Arcadum said in his latest statement, published only this past few months. Not too far away. Now, you might be wondering, Crispy, why aren't you talking about this day of? First and foremost, I didn't even know this was happening day of, because when he posted this update, it got 0 attention, man. I'm telling you, nobody noticed this. Like, it got 60 likes and like 40 replies. Many people just saying that he sucks. But at the end of the day, it's not like anyone who matters was like, hey, Arcadum's back. That sucks. No one noticed. No one paid attention. Which, I don't think that was Arcadum's goal. See, I have a theory that Arcadum was not satisfied with the current trajectory of his community. His goal is to rebuild his community, by the way. We're about to hear it directly from the horse's mouth. But he's been largely unsuccessful. His streams have done nothing but degrade in viewership, from 100 to 70 to now 50 average viewers. It's looking really bad for the guy, and it's only getting worse over time. So Arcadum goes to Twitter, tries to stir the pot, tries to get a little bit of attention. I mean, hell, he just started streaming again in October, and when that happened, he got lots of attention, and that gave him some form of viewership. It was not significant by any means, but it was something, especially compared to this. But it failed. In any case, though, we'll get to his utter failure to return his career later. In the meantime, let's read this apology. I have returned. Again, a little bit misleading, considering he's returned a few times now. But after taking some time away from the internet and focusing on therapy, maturing, and much-needed soul-searching, I began streaming D&D again last year and rebuilding my community. There you go. Just to inform you all that do not already know, the Verum community, that's his homebrew world, has a new Discord, a new phase of games, and I'm finally delighted with how it's shaping out. However, there are still some things that need to be addressed. If you were really delighted about how things were shaping out, I don't think you'd be making these addresses in the first place. You'd just shut up and enjoy your money, but you're not making any, are you? I continue to vehemently deny, absolutely and completely, any accusations of SA or taking advantage of people for sexual gain. I always intended to keep all this to my personal life, along with a relationship that was failing and was for a long time, but my desperation leaked to the public. I love this. If you're unaware, recently, another YouTuber, a very prominent YouTuber named Illuminati, has been in a very prominent tiff after she leaked some information about people's personal lives. That was horrible. What Arcadum is trying to do is associate himself with that same thing. These women who are accusing me, they leaked my personal life. I intended to keep these less than ideal relationships, allegedly less than ideal relationships, to my private life. But these harpies, they released it to the public. Ah, horrible. I feel such pity for you, Arcadum. Well done. I tried to start relationships I wasn't ready for and didn't want to face my failings properly until it was too late. I want to again apologize to my community, colleagues, partners, and anyone else negatively affected by my actions. With the continued therapy, I am in better control of my emotions. Frankly, I'm a weird, dramatic, quirky guy that's not like other girls. He didn't say that, but, you know. And using an analytic to describe my emotions was not a wise thing to do, especially when I was wrong about the numbers. 17.8% was more like 1%, really. Lol. That is a direct quote. And if you're unaware, he is recalling and referencing the recording that I referenced earlier, the recording of the person who he was acting very unflattering towards. No illegal behavior by any means, but he was basically acting like a terrible, awful, manipulative, and horrible friend. And a lot of people really disliked him because of that. That was the most, in my opinion, that was the thing that most people reacted to, because it was a recording of Arcadum acting like, frankly, an ass, and it was very compelling, even if it was not nearly the worst thing he was accused of. In that call, he says that 17.8% of my friends would stay with me if I stopped playing Dungeons and Dragons. That's it. Woe is me. Feel bad for me. He was wrong. It was 1%, which I think his math is still off because, I mean, he was getting thousands of Twitch viewers, and now he only gets 50. So if someone could do the math on that, because I'm pretty sure that doesn't check out to 1%. I have worked with my therapist to unpack my behaviors and build better coping mechanisms than analytics. Which, I'm about to be very up my own bum here, and I'm really sorry about this, because I understand that everybody works through their crap differently, and everybody feels differently about therapy and how therapy helps you. But, like, oh, I have new coping strategies. Like, my therapist told me how to cope. It's such like a robotic way to describe what therapy does to you. Like, without getting too personal, I can go way more in depth in general on how therapy has personally helped me. Like, to me, it's just such a cold, analytical view of therapy. It doesn't feel very serious. And look, I know that's very haughty. I'm not trying to discount or trying to put down coping strategies by any means. There's a train coming by. I'm so sorry if you hear that. But to me, what Arcadum is doing here is just so cold. It's such a boring, robotic view of how therapy can help a person. It feels disingenuous, is what I'm trying to say. Everything here feels disingenuous, obviously with context, but after conferring with my therapist and discussing with my loved ones, it became clear to them that returning to my profession was a key to my happiness despite my hesitation. Look, it's my family and friends' fault that I came back to Twitch, the platform that I allegedly abused. I didn't want to. I fought my family on this. You know, it's their fault that I'm back on my Twitch career. What a load of crap, dude. Oh my god, shut up. You wanted to come back to the career because it's all you know. Alright? Just admit it. Admit that this is what you love doing. Hell, you know, if I have so many like YouTubers that are like Arcadum in my head, but Minilad is a YouTuber who was accused of soliciting inappropriate material from young people. And that's obviously very bad. When he came back to YouTube and he finally apologized after trying to ignore the allegations for so long, he just straight up said, like, look, I love this job. That's why I came back. I don't like Minilad either, but frankly, at least he told the freaking truth. Because that's the truth. The truth is that Minilad, and I'm pretty damn sure Arcadum too, they just love this job and don't want to lose it. You know, it's not your family's fault you came back to YouTube, man. They did not convince you. You convinced you. Or at least you were a big part of it. If you didn't want to come back, you wouldn't have come back, right? They saw the joy in me as I was talking about my love for creating worlds and sharing it with others. It was a unanimous decision to pursue what makes me truly happy, especially with support. Now, if you're unaware, I'm actually going to censor her name because I don't feel right using it. That person I just mentioned, that is his girlfriend, who, again, or wife, I don't know what their relationship is supposed to be. He was very inconsistent about that. According to Moist Critical, who knew the guy, it was his girlfriend who he claimed was his wife for some unknown reason. I just think it's shocking that he brought her up at all, given the extremely bad stuff that her and many of her associates had to say about him. It's crazy to me. He goes on to say that this person had the most reason to be angry with me for things I did, but she forgave me and supported my return. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not, who knows? No one knows this guy, so it's possible he's lying. I've come to a place where I don't care as much about how the internet views me. All I want to continue is to pursue my passions, telling my stories, and feel genuinely fulfilled. I'm not going to continue because it's just a promo after that. I'm not going to promo this guy. I mean, obviously, I encourage you not to go check out his streams. Please don't. Please do not, okay? Don't give this guy the satisfaction of gaining a single viewer. After all that, now what? Nothing. He puts that entire statement out, releases this dramatic twit longer. Nothing happens. Does his Twitch improve in any way? No, it doesn't. His Twitch, if anything, is shrinking. I wanted to do this podcast last week when we had Duke on the show from One Shot Questers, excuse me. I just had cake. But when we had Duke on last week, I wanted to do the segment, but I ended up not doing it because we had him. And back then, last week, he had 70 viewers, according to some Twitch analytics. Now he's got 50 on average, rapidly shrinking. It's not getting better. No matter what he says about how happy he is with his community, he's failing. And I'm sorry that I'm being unkind here, but the facts are prima facie unkind. What Arcadum and many of the other YouTubers of his ilk do understand is that they are all in the same boat. Arcadum has joined the ranks of YouTubers who lost their career. They failed. They no longer have their job, but they just can't let it go. It's like getting fired from the McDonald's and sitting outside serving your own homemade chicken nuggets, pretending to still work there. But you're not actually working there. You're not making any money, right? Because you got fired. You're done. Now, Arcadum obviously is still Twitch streaming. I'm sure he's making some money from donations. But just like before him, Darkside Phil, The Spoony One, Wings of Redemption, Illuminati, Blair, that's a recent one I could think of, Mini Lad. These are all people who either in one big burst or one or a bunch of small events lost their career. Their viewership tanked. And they decided to take their career, attach some puppet strings to it, and macabrely puppet around the corpse for everyone to see. And by everyone, I mean no one, because no one's seeing this crap anymore. You know, streamers and YouTubers that survive on a couple dollars of ad revenue and a handful of Twitch sub donations in a desperate bid to buy the next bunch of McDonald's chicken nuggets, you know? No hate on McDonald's chicken nuggets, though, they're good. But the point is, it's not like Arcadum is joining a very prestigious group here, to say the least. He lost his career, whether he likes to admit it or not. And he's not going to get it back for multiple reasons. Number one, I'm going to be looking at this, by the way, from a pure analytic standpoint, because I'm not going to look at this from a moral view. I clearly wasn't taking his apology and update very seriously, and I'm not going to take anything else he has to say seriously either. So I'm not going to talk about this from like a do I like the guy point of view, because I clearly don't, right? I'm just going to talk about what I know, which is analytics, Twitch, YouTube, social media. I understand that. So let's do it. First and foremost, Arcadum is trying to catch lightning in a bottle twice. He lost his career and he's trying to rebuild it, but that is extremely hard to do. It is very, very difficult without an extremely dedicated audience to support you, right? Arcadum is not like James Charles or Shane Dawson. You know, these are YouTubers who got canceled and they came back. Shane Dawson and James Charles, they still make millions, right? But Arcadum is not these people. James Charles is stupid famous. I don't know anything about the guy, but, you know, I know he has a lot of subscribers and a hell of a lot of money. He's stupid famous. That's not Arcadum. He is big. You know, he's got thousands of Twitch followers, tens of thousands of followers on YouTube and Twitch. I mean, he used to at least. He lost a lot of them, but still, he used to. But still, like, that's not what James Charles or Shane Dawson is. You know, those guys are huge, like millions upon millions of views and subs. They can tank a controversy like this because there's going to be at least, you know, a few 100,000 people who will stick around, keep your videos churning through the algorithm until people forget and bring your stuff back. Arcadum is not that. His remaining viewership isn't in the tens of thousands or the thousands. It's not even in the hundreds. It's like 100 or less. That's not enough. And on top of that, the lightning in a bottle thing is not just for general content. He's doing something very hard. Guys, actual plays are hard to make work. Trust me, I couldn't do it. I'm willing to admit my own failures too. You know, obviously not on the same level as Arcadum's, allegedly. But my own failures, I couldn't make actual plays work on this channel. I couldn't do it because it's hard. The competition is tough when it comes to Dungeons & Dragons actual plays. Arcadum has a lot of competition. And a lot of people are going to rather watch like Critical Role or Dimension 20 or Heart of a Lindy from Joe Cat. They would rather watch that than watch someone like Arcadum, right? For many, many reasons. Most notably that a lot of people frankly don't like him. And that brings me to my next point. What a lot of these people, these YouTubers who shamble around the corpses of their careers, what they don't understand is if people don't like you, they don't like you. And you cannot make them like you by principle of rhetorical inertia, by just tiring them out. They're, if anything, going to dislike you more. It's not a winning strategy. I have seen this countless times. People who think they're the bee's knees. Where are they now? Look at the Spoony one. I don't know if many of you guys have heard of him, but you know, back in the late 2000s, he did, you know, those classic Nintendo NES game reviews. I remember he was big on that. And he also did a lot of tabletop stories. He was actually one of my first exposures to tabletop back in the late 2000s. I didn't start playing until like years later. But he was actually one of my first exposures to this whole medium. You know where he is now? After a huge career of mistakes and failures, he's an e-beggar on Twitch with a handful of viewers. Because just like Arcadum, he messed up. He messed up a lot. He has a huge catalog of controversies. And people left. And the Spoony can't make them like him or make them come back. People know who he is, and they would rather watch something else, someone else. Arcadum is the same way. Whether he likes it or not, people believe these allegations. Again, they're all allegations. Nothing has been proven, but I'm sorry, the truth is it doesn't matter. If people don't like you, they don't like you. And you can't make them like you. And in this job, being liked is the job. You need to be liked. You need people to want to check out your content. And with Arcadum, people don't want to. That's the truth. A truth he's clearly unwilling to accept. Obviously, again, I'm just theorizing, but I think that's why he came back to Twitter. In an attempt to stir up something in some way to get back to where he was before. But he'll never be where he was before. He's not going anywhere. And I mean that in both ways. He's not going to disappear. I think Arcadum, just like all these other streamers, honestly, just like me, you know, I love this job. It's a great job. I understand not wanting to leave it behind. I do. I get it. But eventually, you gotta move on. Arcadum is never going to get the platform back. The platform that he allegedly abused. It's not going to happen. He's not going to become who he was before. He's not even going to be a fraction of it. He never will. He could brag about his Discord server with 666 active users. No, I'm not kidding. That was the number the last time I checked. He can talk about how his community's doing well, how he's gotten forgiveness from the person who had the most incentive to hate him. He can deny the allegations all he wants. But the truth is, people don't want him around because people don't need him. There's always someone around the other corner that people will like more, that doesn't have the allegations that Arcadum has hanging above him, that frankly does his job better. That's the truth. And like I said before, I'm sorry I'm being unkind, but I got no choice. The facts are unkind. And that's Arcadum. That's what happened. That's his return. Who knows what will happen next? Actually, I'm pretty sure I know. It's nothing. I think he's just going to keep on shambling on. And that... it just sucks, really. I have nothing else to say on that. It just sucks. You guys really seem to enjoy when I did What Happens to Teen Phoenix video, so hell, maybe I'll keep on doing these. There's a lot of these updates I could give on what happened to past figures in this industry. So hey, if you like this, let me know. I know this is a lot less cheery than what we normally talk about here. We usually talk about lighthearted horror stories and improving your D&D games, but every once in a while we pull out something a little bit spicier. But yeah. There you go. That's the end of that section. Let's move on to something a lot more cheerful. Let's talk about the end of my own Dungeons & Dragons game. And unlike Arcadum, I think it went rather well. This past Friday, something very notable happened in my life. I'm going to move a little bit so that I'm in focus. Sorry. This past Friday, something very notable happened in my life. I finished my Dungeons & Dragons campaign. After 2 years, Descent into the Veil has come to an end. Yeah, I name my D&D campaigns, okay? I'm a nerd, alright? Leave me alone. It has been a long time coming, to say the least. This has been a massive project. I've put hundreds of hours of work into this, and man, that ending was incredible. Now, the TLDR of it is this. In my first ever D&D campaign, the party opened a portal to the Eldritch Hungering Cosmos. This is my version of, like, the realm space in D&D, except this place is, like, horrifying. It's a void of eldritch horrors that you really don't want to go to, because you'll go instantly insane. It's where aberrations come from, but only kind of. Aberrations are like the physical embodiments of the cosmos eking into this mortal plane. Like, beholders are just an ounce, a molecule of the true power that lies within this realm. Illithids are just it affecting mortal races, morphing them into what the void knows. It's a cool concept. I'm really proud of how that turned out. But the party left a portal to this realm open for a little bit too long, and it resulted in a massive scar being torn in the realms. Hell, the Feywild, the mundane world, all of them have this massive storm covering the central part of it. In the mundane world, it floats over the Marble Sea. It's this massive rift where eldritch horrors make their home, where it's basically impossible to pass through. And obviously, having this huge scar on the ocean is bad. It's separated the two continents of the world that used to be fairly easy to commute between. You know, you just take a ship. Now, there's a massive horrid storm filled with monsters in the middle there. So the eastern continent of Aora was cut off, and for decades, that place was dominated by pirates. It also was a, by the way, very neat excuse to retcon, since the Hungering Cosmos transcends time. So when they left this portal open, this veil, as it's called the Orphan's Veil, it didn't open in the present. It opened in the past, 50 years in the past. So by the point of Campaign 2, even though only 10 years had passed, the veil had been around for 60 years. A little bit trippy, but it was a fun little sci-fi concept I worked into the campaign. In any case, this thing was bad. Aora was dominated by outlaws. And that was great, because this was a pirate campaign. Outlaws were kind of a thing. And they got to fight all sorts of different kinds of outlaws. Vampire mobsters, outlaws with guns using demon magics. I mean, come on, demon cowboys, it's too cool. Leviathan pirates led by the pirate lords and the great Leviathan king Amor Crassus, who brought forth an undead dragon all the way from Campaign 1, the first D&D campaign we did together. This dragon was a creature that they defeated. Well, they didn't really defeat it. They teleported it away, and then Kalia Solfero, a character you might be familiar with from Shadow of Karakonos, my D&D actual play on this channel, she brought it back because the party were fighting Orcus and they needed help. Orcus killed this dragon, and I always thought, okay, I feel like that was a cool moment, but it's kind of lame. The party never got to kill this Midnight King, this great dragon. So our pirate king here revived the dragon so that our Campaign 2 party could do battle with it, and that was awesome. But in any case, all of this fighting, all of this insanity was orchestrated by one man who sought to use the veil for his own gain, to exploit its power to become more than he was. A long-defeated, forgotten god named Vecna, the Nightmare King. He raised a great army of undead, entered the Veil, and the party needed to chase him down. They descended into the Veil, like it says on the tin, and it was awesome. The first session of the 4-part finale was more atmospheric. There was a horror bit at the beginning as the Veil slowly drove their allies and themselves insane, and then a fight against some aberrations. That was really fun. The party had to go on a whaling little side quest. If you watch previous episode with Dingo Doodles, this was directly inspired by them. They wanted me to make a Vecna whale. I didn't. I made an Eldritch Abomination whale because the party always wanted to do a whaling mission. But I really know how to make that work, so I made it an Eldritch Abomination that they had to chase down in the ocean. Eventually, they needed to jump into the water itself, diving into the depths to chase it down, and that brought in some fun little thalassophobia as they were hunted by this great creature that turned out to be a form of very powerful aboleth. It was really cool. The second part of this was a battle against Vecna's fleet, including a massive skyship. They had to take their own skyship, fly up, and then board it, ship-to-ship combat. It was lots of fun. And then the final session was massive. I think I said it was 4 parts. This was actually 3 parts, my bad. But the final session, which I just had this past weekend, was insane. 7 hours long, beginning at 9 p.m., ending at 4 a.m. Oh my god. It was amazing. A massive Ragnarok-esque war where a lot of their beloved NPCs are meeting their demise, the party trying their best to keep everyone alive, keep everyone going in a desperate battle against a foe greater than themselves. It was great. Not gonna lie, it was mostly great because I used the soundtrack from God of War Ragnarok. There's a YouTube channel who did a mix called Realms at War, which covers the last 2 hours of God of War Ragnarok, but only in music, taking the in-game soundtracks and putting them together in this big orchestral mix. And I loved it. I love it. It's so good. I prepped to that music, and I think it made the session so much better. And then I used the music in my game. If you're unaware, I use music very closely. I try my best to sync up my descriptions and my dialogue to music because I think it makes it just so much more immersive and epic. And it worked. My party were in it. Like at first, my party were coming home from work. Half of them all work at the same place, so they're telling work stories and talking about the dumb things that happened. They're not in the game yet. They're not invested. But the second that music started to hit, when the music got to its climax, that's when my party were in the battle yet again. They were finally immersed. They were finally buying in, and that felt great. Like, the first 30 minutes, they were a little bit more casual, but when they got into it, they were into it. So they were so into it that they stayed up until 4 a.m. to play. So, a clear sign of enthusiasm. They fought their way through plenty of mundane foes, a couple of Eldritch Abominations and some undead, many of their allies falling along the way. They fought a mini-boss before Vecna, which was one of their fallen party members. A player character died a long time ago. Actually did a campaign diary about this years ago. A player character named Freya Solveig, and they had to put her back to rest because Vecna had gone out of his way to find her body and turn her into his grave knight because Vecna sucks. In my world, Vecna is a narcissistic, petty dick. The guy will go out of his way to hurt you in the worst ways possible. He's the Nightmare King. Psychological torture is his thing. He loves it. And he went out of his way to find the party's greatest failure, bring her back, and have her attack them. It was petty and mean and horrible, but meant for a great mini-boss. After that, Vecna came in. It was amazing. He was tuned to the All-Father boss theme from God of War Ragnarok, the boss theme for Odin, and the party were really into it. When that music started to play, my party were instantly like, oh boy, here we go, final boss, let's do it. And it was great to see them just so invested, especially since right before the fight started, Vecna killed an ally the party were quite fond of, the Raven Queen. Obviously, not dead forever. The Raven Queen is the aspect of death, if you're unaware. And Vecna killed her in quite a brutal way. The party used the Hand of Vecna to summon her into the world. In my world lore, you need 3 ingredients to summon a god, as well as a lengthy ritual in a specific, place and whatever. You need the blood of the dragon, the flesh of the dead, and the essence of light. 3 very hard things to get your hands of. Like, you need artifact level powers in order to summon the god into the world. Fortunately, they used the hand of Vecna, which obviously Vecna, upon realizing this, literally pulled his hand out of her body. It emerged from her chest like facehugger style, and her blood poured into the ocean. When they fought Vecna, they were literally fighting him in an ocean of the Raven Queen's blood. It was brutal. The Vecna fight itself was incredible. I was using a Flea Mortal stat block, the Lich stat block for Flea Mortals with my own adjustments. And it was tough. I don't think it was as tough as my party were anticipating. We've actually had harder fights, in my opinion. I mean, they won this fight, so obviously we've had harder fights because they've lost others. I also think my party were really powerful. By this point, they became level 16. And even though level 16 may not seem that high to you, in my games, that's pretty damn powerful. I give them insane legendary magical items. I load them with power. I buff them in lots of different ways. They have access to a lot of different abilities and kits that allow them to go way beyond what a normal level 16 player character would do. There's also 6 of them. Every time you add a player, it exponentially increases the power of your party. Having 6 players is a lot of players, and those players were easily able to take on a CR 22 stat block Vecna. I mean, that's where I'd place him, and I think that that's fair. You know, Vecna was definitely challenging, though. He had 4 different attacks. He had a stun that he could use on player characters on a failed wisdom saving throw. He had a variety of different attacks that could push you, curse you, cause you not be able to regenerate hit points, weaken the power of your attacks. The pushing thing was really big, because if he could push you off, they were fighting him on floating islands. If he pushed you off the platform and you weren't able to fly, my bad, that would be really bad for you, obviously. In a lot of ways, the Vecna fight was rewarding and epic. There were 3 phases. The first phase was on the floating islands. The second phase, Vecna transformed into this other form that he is known by in this campaign. He was originally met as Cain Miva, this random bard the party met with, who manipulated them in a variety of ways before they knew he was Vecna. And he transformed into this form and teleported them into the Hungering Void. The plot of this campaign is that Vecna is trying to extract power from what he calls the new god, an eldritch abomination he's summoning forth. Now, obviously, the new god isn't going to give him power. The new god's going to instantly eviscerate him. But Vecna is so narcissistic, he doesn't believe that's going to happen. He's built the new god a body, and the party fought him on top of this body he has crafted. I found the perfect map from Sei and Peiku, incredible cartographers who made this fight what it is. And man, that part of the fight was awesome. It opened with Vecna taking away all of their magic. Any spells below 6th level no longer function, and all magic items were essentially disabled. Their effects no longer functional. They needed to break Vecna's concentration to return their magic to them, which required them to really plan out. The rogue needed to get a really good sneak attack in to finally debuff him enough so that he could roll a failed concentration check. Because if you're unaware, a concentration check is a constitution saving throw, the amount of damage divided by 2, and the only person that could do enough damage was the rogue and the sorcerer, who had access to 7th level spells. Put this all together, and it was a very intense moment for the party. Losing their magic was a big deal. Once they got their magic back, though, Vecna teleported them back into the temple where he originally opened this portal to the void, and this is where the horror story comes in. As Vecna and the party land, the party have this sorrowful moment with a fallen ally of theirs who they find dead inside the temple. He died to try and keep the enemies of the party away from this place, because Vecna's army is pressing down the party. You know, the forces of the undead are coming, and this NPC ally sacrificed himself to halt their advance so that the party could take on Vecna, party v God, you know, without having to take on his army too. In this moment, Vecna gives a monologue about how if they had just played their part, none of this would have happened. They would have died with purpose, and he would have given meaning to a meaningless existence, blah, 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 in the monologue. I noticed that the music cut out, which, like I said, music's a big part of my game. That was concerning, but I kept on going for about 3 minutes. And the reason I kept on going for 3 minutes was because no one was responding to me. I was like, no one's responding to the monologue. I'm not getting any reactions. What's going on? The reason no one was responding to me was because I disconnected from the call. Because my Wi-Fi shut down at 3 a.m. And I was freaking out. I was like, oh my god. A bit of background for this whole thing. Vecna, the Nightmare King, this whole battle, this has to end today because my party are going on a bunch of projects. And if we don't finish the campaign today, we're gonna have to delay this finale by weeks, maybe even months. And I don't want to do that. I really don't want to do that, right? I want to wrap up this story. We have so much momentum. The session's going so well. I am not being put out by a disconnected call. I'm not going to lie. I was panicking. It's 3 a.m. And at this point, I'm freaking out. Eventually, though, my Wi-Fi comes back on, and thank God, the party waited for me. They were all in the call waiting for me playing Minecraft. But they were waiting for me. And we finished the session. We kept on going. They took on Vecna, who at this point claimed the Scythe of the Raven Queen for his own, combining all of his power together in one last-ditch effort to take down the party. And God, it was awesome! This final battle resulted in multiple player characters being down. Only 2 out of the 6 were still up. Vecna teleported away the ranger captain of the party. He was teleported away, and of course the ranger still has a ranged weapon, and his ranged weapon exceeds the range of the teleport, so he could still make the attack. So as this ranger's falling through the air, possibly to his death, he draws his gun and aimed. Vecna had 40 health left. He rolled 45 points of damage. How do you want to do this in the most epic way possible? Like, God, this was awesome. I let all the party, even the people who were down, get back up to finish off Vecna in their own way with the pirate captain Flint Strider, who has been mocked this entire campaign. He's been mocked as an incompetent pirate, a dumb captain who doesn't know what he's doing. But at the end, he got the final blow on a god. As the party unleashed their strikes against him, he's falling through the air. He draws his hand cannon, forged with the soul of a great leviathan, aims the bullet right into Vecna's eye, closes his eyes, holds his breath, and pulls the trigger. God, that was awesome. And Vecna the Nightmare King was no more. At the end, tuned to some very sad sea shanties, farewell to Tarwathi and the parting glass. The party said farewell to fallen friends and living friends as the crew of 2 years broke up. I took a lot of inspiration from the end of Community, which is a show that I have been on a binge on recently. That show ends with friends leaving, with friends walking away. And even though that show is obviously, a lot more down to earth than a D&D campaign, I want that same vibe. That bittersweet vibe of saying farewell, not just to those that fell, but to those who still live that are moving on with their lives. And not gonna lie, there were a lot of tears shed. At the end, I'm really happy with how this campaign turned out. Like, I am so happy. Now, there are some things I wish I improved. Like, most notably, I probably should have split the session into 2 different parts, maybe. My biggest thing was I was no longer able to do a lot of things I normally did. Sound effects are also a big part of my campaign. I do like bullet sounds and sword sounds and magic sounds, and I did not do that at all because I was so tired. At 4 a.m., dude, I was no longer in it. I was operating the music and I was operating the stats. That's all I had the energy for. I couldn't do dialogue either. Like, during the fight against Freya, the fallen party member, Vecna is speaking through her body, and he's saying these messed up things to hurt the party psychologically, just taunting them. And I thought the dialogue there was very, very strong. The party thought so too. When they were fighting Vecna, all he could say is, "You're going to die, you're nothing," because I couldn't think of anything else, because I was so tired. I was so out of it by that point in the night. I think the fight ended at 3:30 a.m., and by that point, like, there's no way I could come up with any sort of creative dialogue. Vecna didn't even get any last words just because I was so focused on describing all the epic final actions, because I synced the "how do you want to do this" to music, and they all describe things to me. And obviously, I can't practice that. I can't predict what they're going to say. All I can do is listen to the song and try to time it as best as I can. So doing that was a lot of brain power already, so obviously I couldn't come up with any final words. But I don't regret that. I do not regret that's how it went down. Honestly, even though I think there are minor aspects of improvement, I think overall this was phenomenal. This final game I am so proud of. 7 hours of the best Dungeons & Dragons I have ever run in my life. Before this, we had a final battle against Orcus that was similarly big and epic, with the party, going in and out of Orcus's body to pull out, because like I said, you have to summon a god through the essence of light, the flesh of the dead, the blood of the dragon. They had to enter Orcus's body to literally kill mini bosses that represented each of these things as they're fighting Orcus. So all these different phases I think went really well. One thing that the Orcus fight did have that Vecna didn't was minions. I wanted Vecna to be a one-on-one battle. There was one point where our paladin, who has the ability to summon the undead, foolishly summoned undead against Vecna, and unfortunately those undead obeyed Vecna, not him. So he incidentally created some very weak adds for Vecna, some very weak minions. I did not intend this, and those minions didn't really do anything other than delay the fight by a little bit, because 2 of the party members focused on the minions while the rest focused on Vecna. It wasn't a big deal. But I do think that maybe I should have given him some minions. Minions, they're a big part of making, especially fights with 6 players, making that work, because when all 6 players can just wail on one target, they can build up the damage so quickly. Vecna had a lot of health, and, appropriately had a lot of health because this was a 3-phase battle, but I think with minions, it would have made the fight a little bit more dynamic, though, again, the fight went well. Like, I think it would have been better with minions, but that's just a thing. What happened with the battle, like, I'm really satisfied with it. Maybe another thing would be if I just needed to keep it more in mind, in Flee Mortals, you can't just automatically succeed a saving throw with Legendary Resistance. Vecna has to give up on something. Here, he has to give up on his spell attacks. His spell attacks would be at disadvantage if he uses his Legendary Resistance, which I don't think really matters because he has like plus 15 to hit, meaning unless he rolls a natural 1, the guy's probably going to hit the party. But maybe that would be it. I think I only used a Legendary Resistance twice, and I don't really regret that either, though, because if I used it more, the fight would have been longer, and I don't think it needed to be longer because it was already long. So, I mean, really, I'm trying to, pick at straws for improvement, but I'm not gonna lie, guys, this is something I'm really proud of. I hope everyone gets to experience this. This is what I play D&D for. I play D&D to shed these tears to my party, because, yeah, at the end, we cried. At the end, there was tears. When the final moments happened, I described a somber scene where all the party separate. They're all separated. They're not together anymore. They've moved on with their lives. They're doing their own individual things. The captain walks the deck of his ship where his friends once stood. He's there by himself, but he's not mad. He's not sad. He doesn't mourn that it's over. He's happy because it happened. He's content. Vecna's whole thing was proving that life is meaningless, that he might as well just give up. He might as well summon this god for some desperate chance to impose meaning on a meaningless existence. But what I gave to the party at the end was an explanation of, I guess, the philosophy of my campaign, not to get haughty. But the purpose is that there is meaning. The party found meaning in each other. And even if they're separate, the effects they had on each other still remain. And in the back of the description is a beautiful rendition of The Parting Glass by the Longest Johns and Miss Holmes. And when the final note hits and I said, we're going to close out the campaign, I think that was one of the happiest moments of my life. I'm pretty confident of that. Wrapping up the story of 2 years was incredible. I am so happy that I got to experience this with my friends. And like I said before, I hope that all of you guys get to experience the same joy. Because damn, that was awesome. But yeah, there you go. That's the end of my D&D campaign with a minor horror story. I actually did post that on RPG Horror Stories. It got a lot of attention. People didn't realize it was me. I just wanted to tell people about that. But there you go. There's a horror story. There's the overall amazing campaign that I've had. I'm so excited to do it again. We're doing a one-shot to buffer in between this and the third campaign because I need a freaking break, not gonna lie. That was a lot of work. But there you go. Without further ado, though, I'm going to talk briefly about Homebrew, and then we're going to wrap this up. Without further ado, let's end the episode. All right. So, let's talk about the Homebrew. If you guys are unaware, I'm slowly working my way through a fun little project where I am rewriting D&D to fit into the sandbox of my home game. This is not a professional project. If I release any of these materials, it will be free. I am not finished with making all of the backgrounds look fancy in a PDF yet, but I am done with the vast majority of the background content. I'm pretty much moving on to working on races now, and while I'm working on races, when I get bored of that, I work on making the backgrounds all pretty and nice PDF. I like doing that kind of multitasking thing where you have two projects that you can move between. In case you get bored of one, you can work on the other. That's always a good work habit, by the way, if you want to be very productive. But anyway, working on races has been fun. In case you guys missed it, on the last solo episode, we talked about my plan, which is to give races the following. They're going to have an active bonus unique to the race, a passive bonus unique to the race, and then a series of traits that can be shared between multiple races. So, for example, humans are based around inspiration, and humans are probably going to be the only race with heavy stuff spec'd into inspiration. On the other hand, orcs and Goliaths will both be strong. They'll both have the traits that allow them to have 2 times carrying capacity. Being strong will not be a specific thing for orcs or for Goliaths. or dark vision, for example. Dark vision is shared among multiple different people, right? But, you know, if, for example, dwarves have dark vision. I think they do, at least. I don't play with a lot of dwarves. I'm pretty sure they have dark vision. But the dwarven passive bonus will be something unique to them, likely something involving tools. And their active bonus will also be unique to their race as well. So that's the plan for the mechanics. But recently, I have been working my way through conceptualizing the lore of how I'm going to write these people out, because I haven't really thought about species lore a lot in my world. I've thought a lot about, you know, the lore of kingdoms or societies or organizations, but in terms of like how humans have evolved over time, that's more uncertain. Now, one thing I do want to focus on is actually uprooting something that's been established in my world for a while when it comes to lore. I had a pantheon, an extensive D&D pantheon, a variety of gods, and I'm pretty much striking most of it from existence, because I don't like that anymore. I don't like having a Greek-style pantheon with all these gods that you are certain about. You know, all these like Percy Jackson-esque gods you can just reference and even contact and go to. I want gods to be much, much more vague and out there. For a long time, in Campaign 2, Descent into the Veil, the Raven Queen and the Nightmare King, Vecna, were very vague presences. For a long, long time, they were much more vague, ominous forces working in the background of the campaign. The Raven Queen, I mean, really, the Raven Queen isn't even the true Raven Queen. She's just an aspect of death sent down to communicate with the players. That's what she is. You know, the true goddess is something they can't even speak to. Not really. The stranger on the shore that appeared to them, the Raven Queen, is just like an avatar. The same thing with Vecna. Vecna is a mortal that rose to godhood as well. Same thing with this Raven Queen avatar. They're both mortals that rose to godhood. But proper gods that have existed longer than them, the party have never communicated with those guys. They've only interacted with beings that have arisen to godhood. And I think that that's going to be a consistent theme throughout, where all gods at some point were something else. Like they were an archfey or they were a powerful elemental, but at some point they grew so strong that they began absorbing power through worship, through tithing, through belief. That's where they can get their sustenance now. I think the main qualification for godhood, though, the thing that makes something a god, isn't like it being some kind of species. Like, I don't like the idea that gods are some kind of separate species, Marvel style. I don't like that, where they're all just like existing around. It makes gods too mundane. I want to embrace the same kind of vibe that George R. R. Martin has going around with The Song of Ice and Fire, where gods are so much more mysterious and, in my opinion, so much cooler. When there's so much more uncertainty about what's on the other side, when there's so much more uncertainty about where clerics or warlocks get their power, I think that makes it so much more interesting. There's a line in Dishonored, the game from Arcane Studios, where a god that is very obviously real, a being known as the Outsider, says this line: "I have watched societies kill each other over 1,000 right gods and 1,000 wrong ones." I hate that in so many D&D worlds, there are basically no wrong gods. Like, the gods people believe in are just, you know, they just are there. You know, they can often even be just communicated with. And I don't know. I don't really know if I'm up for that vibe. That's not really what I'm going with here. So I'm trying to make the gods a lot more vague. The beings that the party are interacting with are mysterious entities sent down, avatars that the gods use to communicate. But most gods, many people don't even know if they exist. And many gods are simply interpretations of things much more mundane, like maybe the sun, for example. I like that vibe, and that ties a lot into races, because in my original lore, a lot of the races, their lore summarized to: humans were made by the Morning Lord. Done. Elves were made by the Arkheart. Done. Now that kind of thing has been kind of stricken, and the Arkheart and the Morning Lord might not even exist, I can kind of open it up a lot more. You know, in the campaign 2, in Descent into the Veil, humans had a very extensive history. The party had a vision of more primitive humans living in mud huts, and saw one of the first humans develop sorcerous magic and then get executed, and then get risen decades later get risen millennia later by Vecna so that she could fight the party. But that's a whole other story for another day. The point is, humans now have this extensive old history that doesn't tie into any sort of supernatural magic, and investigating where they came from would be cool. There's a part of me that kind of wants to keep it a mystery, though. Having mysteries in your world is good. Having things be kept on the back burner is cool. Having things not be explained is fine. You don't need to explain everything. I think that's a big world-building mistake a lot of people make, where they over-explain so much of their world. You don't need to. Some things are fun to keep a mystery, especially the origin of people. But in any case, back to the lore of species across the world, instead of focusing on the origin, I'm going to focus more on general cultures, like where these people can be commonly found. For example, goblins come from the Feywild, and goblins, in my world, they love, more than anything, food. They love food a lot. Eating is their thing. A lot of factions of goblins are very good at hunting. They like eating big stuff, and they'll eat anything. You know, they'll eat oozes, they'll eat dragons, they'll eat whatever as long as it's meat. I mean, they can eat other stuff, but they love eating meat of all different sorts and all different types, and that makes them extremely capable hunters. So societies that deal with a lot of monsters, they often hire clans of goblins to roam around and keep them in check, because the goblins will happily do it, not for money, just for the opportunity to kill monsters and eat them. On the other hand, a lot of goblins will form and join bandit groups, not so that they can get gold, but because they want to eat their victims. Not a practice common among every goblin, but a lot of goblins don't really care about the moral implications of eating sentient beings and will happily do it. This also, however, creates some kind of conflict between goblins and bandits of other species, because goblins hate alcohol. They don't like the stuff. Goblins, you know, that when they drink, they throw up. And they don't like throwing up because they like food in their tummies, not spewing out of their mouths, right? So they hate alcohol. And that means that with a lot of bandit groups, goblins don't fit in, meaning goblins often form their own bandit clans to hunt down victims for consumption. Goblins love their food. And I really like that about goblins in my world. It gives them a nice little, also gives them a nice little rivalry with halflings who love alcohol. So, you know, there's that. Developing that was fun. Coming up with that concept was fun and enjoyable for me. I like this idea of goblins being these really gluttonous hunters who enjoy the chase of hunting down monsters, many of them becoming expert monster hunters. It's fun. It's interesting. It creates a neat dynamic. And it gives them a place in my world beyond just those things you kill at level 1, right? Developing that was interesting and cool. And really, at this point, I'm not too interested in the lore of where goblins specifically came from. I'm happy with developing this aspect of their culture and creating this aspect of their race. And I'm looking forward to doing that with every single race as well. I'm going to focus on this when I'm writing out brief paragraphs. Obviously, mechanics come first. This is, at the end of the day, a rewrite of D&D 5e's mechanics. The lore can be in my head. I don't need to write all that down right now urgently, but the mechanics, that's important. I need to focus down on the mechanics of what my players want. My players want to play human, ASMR, some kind of vampire creature, which I'm workshopping a name for. I don't want to just go with Dampier. I want to create another name for it. I'm thinking Bloodlost would be cool because it's a nice little spin on Bloodlust. So the new Bloodlost race would be a nice little spin on that term. But I don't know. It's a workshop. It's a work in progress term. I have no idea if I'm going to keep it. But yeah, that's the term for my homebrew vampire / undead playable race, which I'm sure you'll hear about later. I'm still workshopping the mechanics for all that. But overall, I mean, this is just a really small update on what I'm doing with my homebrew, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Smaller updates because I don't have as much going on with it right now, and also we're trying to keep this short since this episode's getting kind of long. But in any case, that's the end of this brief Crispy's Homebrew segment, and from there, I think it's time for us to move on to Thing of the Week! Hit the thing. This was my Thing of the Week last week. But since Annie Edison was coming up a lot in RPG Horror Story videos, I had to hold it off. But Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is an unparalleled masterpiece. A couple days ago, I was listening to just music from this movie, just a couple of songs. And there were a little bit of tears coming out of my eyes because, God, this movie is incredible. First and foremost, as a work of animation, it's art. It's just gorgeous to look at. It's so beautiful. The colors are amazing. The style just pops. It's great. The first movie was the same way, but this takes that art style to a whole new level. But the story of Miles Morales, of Spider-Gwen, of my man Spider-Man 2099, who's very different from how I remember him from the comics and from his video game appearances. He's very different, but yeah, I'm not complaining. I really like this interpretation of the character. It's great. I mean, damn, the character work just in general is so strong here. And everything about this movie gets me excited for the next movie. I know a lot of people are mad that this movie has a sequel and had a bit of a cliffhanger ending, but honestly, I'm not mad at all. I was so hyped at the end. My excitement was boiling. And I don't need that to be resolved right now. I'm still hanging on to that excitement, and I will be hanging on to that excitement until the final movie comes out. This, I think, if they don't mess up this final movie, this will be the greatest film trilogy I have ever seen. Like, it's up there with Lord of the Rings. You know, it's competing right now. We'll see how it ends up. A lot of film trilogies to me falter at the third, like Godfather Part 1 and Part 2, two of my favorite movies of all time. Part 3, nah, definitely not. You know, when you look at Star Wars, the original trilogy, also, you know, Star Wars Episode 5 and Episode 4, amazing films. You know, I love Empire, I love A New Hope, but Return of the Jedi, a lot of that movie doesn't do it for me, I'm not gonna lie. So this movie, though, if they don't pull a Return of the Jedi or a Godfather Part 3, this could be it. This could be my favorite. Because, God, Spider-Verse is just so perfect in so many ways. I know I'm being very vague with this movie. Go watch it. If you haven't seen Into the Spider-Verse, the first movie, go watch that. It will change your life. I don't care if you like superheroes or not. This is an excellent movie. Go see it right away. Holy crap. This movie took years to make. Hours and hours of artists pouring their hearts and souls into this, and you can tell. Everything about this movie, perfection. So damn good. 10 out of 10. Go watch this movie. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is my thing of the week. And with that, we're going to end today's episode of Tavern Adjacent. Lots of stuff going on here. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys did, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of our content, then you can check out our RPG Horror Story series, where I cover the best of the worst of Dungeons & Dragons. Thank you so much for your support on the last episode. And by the way, thank you so much for 44,000 subscribers. Let's keep on going with that. All that stuff, by the way, is linked in the cards. And hey, while you're there, why don't you become a member of the channel? Not a channel member like the paid version. I mean a subscriber to the channel. Join that 44,000 people. And subscribe to Crispy Tavern to get more of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment, "He's not coming back," to let me know you made it to the end of the video. And that's like, comment, subscribe. We will see you all next time. Farewell.